I'm going to get started. I have a short presentation, and then I'm going to actually get you in and around. And if you have your own Google account, email account, or Google account, you can use that. If not, I have some training accounts that you can use to log in as well. All right. In Pewaukee, we are using a secure domain. Google has a business suite, the Google Apps for business that they've had for a while. And probably about 5 to 8 years ago, they introduced Google Apps for Education. And they offered that same business suite to education. And it's a secure domain. We've set up our own domain. And if you notice that over the summer we transitioned from pewaukee.k12.wi.us to pewaukeeschools.org. And that was our transition over into that Google domain. So the usernames for our emails and our accounts are the same as they were before. It's the last 4 letters of the first 4 letters of the last name, the first 3 letters of your first name, and then at pewaukeeschools.org. So the username hasn't changed for staff or for students. For students, their username would be the same with the 2 X's, which is the last 2 digits of their grad year. That just helps us on a management side identify where they are and helps us in our admin console. So I'm going to give you, this is what I'm going to cover very briefly in the presentation before I let you get started hands-on. We're going to talk about what Google tools there are and what we're using in Pewaukee. Some examples in education, just a little general overview of Google Apps for Education and why we chose Google Apps, and then I'll answer some questions. And then I think after you have time to explore and get in and see, you'll possibly have some other questions as well. So, what Google tools have you heard of?
Google Docs.
Docs. Drive.
Email.
Email.
Calendar.
Calendar. Anything else? Okay. So it's actually what's under the Google umbrella, or really better, what isn't, because Google owns and offers a lot of information. So YouTube is now owned by Google. Picasso, which used to be independent, is now also owned by Google. There's Gmail, there's Blogger, there's Google Maps, there's Google Earth. So there's tons underneath that Google umbrella, and a lot that we're making use of in the Pewaukee School District. So some examples in education and how they're being used. Google Documents, and it's sort of Google Drive now, but in particular this would be akin to a Word document. But Writer's Workshop, so for those students that are in Writer's Workshop, they're using that to draft, to revise, to publish their work, to share their work. Peer review, they're getting comments from their teachers, from their peers on their writing. Teacher-created material is being shared with students, so teachers can create a document. It could be a document like this, it could be a presentation, it could be a spreadsheet format, it could be a drawing. Any of those Google Drive document types that we have, teachers can create, and they can share them with students as a view-only file. When the student then receives that file, all they can do is open it. They can't edit it because it's a view-only file. So then the student saves a copy into his or her own drive, and then they can edit it, and the teacher can see that document. So it's creating sort of this nice outbox, inbox in an electronic format. We're using a lot of Google Forms and spreadsheets to register for this session today. We used a Google form. So I went into my drive, I created a form, asked some simple questions. We sent you the link to the form, you fill out the information, and then I get that information published back into a spreadsheet that I can then manipulate and look at the information. So teachers are using it. Here's an example of a parent survey that was sent out at the beginning of this school year to parents of a 5th grade teacher. That teacher's asking about information about the student, the parent, interests, availability to volunteer. That information is then auto-populated back into a spreadsheet for that staff member. Also, we can use it, and that's in front of it, but we can use it to collect and analyze and share data. So students that are working on a research project, it might be in science or in any other topic, they can collect data, they can put it into a spreadsheet and graph, just as we typically would have done maybe in Microsoft Excel. Also in a spreadsheet, in Google, you can begin to brainstorm. So let's say students were talking about animals. If they type the names of 3 animals in a column and then they click and drag, it auto-populates and brainstorms more of that particular type of data. Presentations, researching, collaborating, animations mentioned out here. So teachers and students might be able to keep track of assignments, class calendars. We have calendars at the school level and calendars at the district level. So I can create a calendar and share it with anyone that I would like to. For instance, we have a calendar for this room. So we can sign out using that shared calendar. I only have to go to one place, my calendar, and I can see my personal calendar, but over that I can also see the calendar for this room, and then I can check it out as needed. So I can create calendars, share them with one person or the entire district if I were to choose to do that. Students do have their own calendar available to them to help them organize. Those calendars could also be shared with parents. So what is it? As I mentioned, it is the same premier edition of Google that Google offers for businesses, but it's free for education. It's free for us as educators and students, so we're saving about $50 a year in using this per user. It's nice because it does cross-platform. It does Windows platform, it does an Apple, and it also does a Linux. That's the Penguin. So it works across multiple platforms. It is browser agnostic. It will work in Internet Explorer. It will work in Firefox. It will work in Safari. But it does like Chrome the best. Because guess what? That's a Google product. So Chrome and Firefox are installs. So when you open up a Windows-based computer for the very first time, the browser that's going to be installed is Internet Explorer because that's a Windows-based browser. If you want to use Firefox, which is the little fox, or Chrome, Google Chrome, which is over here, those are free downloads, but you do have to download and install them onto your computer. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. And Safari is Mac, an Apple-based product. That's what comes. Again, it is agnostic. It doesn't really matter what browser, but it does prefer Chrome. The main suite of Google apps would be Gmail, Google Drive, which was Google Docs, but now it's called Google Drive. And in that, you have word processing, you've got spreadsheets and forms, you have presentation, you also have a few others, such as drawing, and then we can add some things as well. There is a calendar, and there also is Google Sites. So those are the main things that we use in Google Apps inside the district. For us, managing it, why we want a Google Apps for Education instead of every student having his or her own individual Google account, because we can manage this. So this is just a screenshot of our administrative console. So you can see over on the left-hand side, we can create groups of users. And then for those particular users, based on their age, the appropriateness of what we want them to have access to, we can turn things on and off. So for instance, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, Chrome, we use Chrome as the browser. Chrome has a web store where you can install apps. Okay. So obviously, I don't want students being able to install any app that they want on their school-owned computers or their own devices, so we turn that off. So the Chrome Web Store is turned off for students. Now there may be times where we want them, their teachers are going to actually take them into the store to install an app that they know they're going to use. And I'll show you some of those in just a minute. Then I open that store for just a short amount of time. The teacher takes them to the store, they install the app onto their browser, then I close the store. So we use Google Apps for Education because at the administrative level, we can control what students and staff have access to and what they don't have access to. In the free version of Google, we can't do that, or an individual account. You can share in an individual account. So when you create a document, you can share it with other people. We can do that in the domain in Google Apps for Education, but we can also publish to the web, which you don't have as a feature in an individual account. That allows you to publish your content as if it were a web page, and give secure access to people outside, maybe that you might, let's say if you're presenting, if I was presenting at a conference, I don't know everyone that's going to be at the conference, and so I can't share the information with them. But if I choose to publish my presentation to the web, then I can make it available via the web. So that's a feature that's inside Google Apps for Education. We can download files. So for those computers where we have Microsoft Office, we can create a document in Google Drive. We can also download it. We can also upload files. So if I have a document that I have created in Microsoft Office and I want to upload it to Drive, I can do that as well. So it's very easy to create things on the web and pull them down, or vice versa. Create things here and then pull them up to the web. And I talked about the Chrome Web Store. It is an online marketplace where there are a lot of extensions and apps that are really designed for the Chrome browser. And here's a screenshot of some of the apps that they may be using. Not all of them, but some of them. There's some math. You can see Me Genius is an online storybook site. Vocabulary Spelling. Carrot Sticks is a math site. So these, in essence, really are links to web applications that sort of mimic, if you will, the iPad application. It's not really an app. They're all free that we have available to us here. And the students then can add those as directed by the teacher via the Chrome Web Store, and they're going to always be on their Chrome browser. It's just sort of a quick bookmark with a pretty icon. So that's another feature of Google Apps for Education. Very quickly, I've covered a lot of information in about 10 minutes. What questions do you have about what I've shown you so far? Because I'm going to get you in just a minute.
I've heard at ACE in the high school they no longer have assignment notebooks. And so for the student to manage their tests and assignments when they're all due, is the individual teacher creating their own calendar and then inviting the student to that calendar so that the student has all their teachers on their own calendar when everything is due? Like I have a test on Monday, I have an assignment due on Thursday for art, and then comes Spanish, I have a quiz on Thursday. Is that how they're managing the assignment notebooks now?
My understanding is that should be being managed via the School Fusion calendar. That the Google Calendar that the student has would be something that the student would manage. So if I, as a student, know I have a test on Friday, I can put that on my calendar. And I can get that information via the School Fusion calendar, or if they're using Moodle at the high school, I know there's some that are using it. What they're doing without the notebook, with the assignment notebook. I know that one of the things we want to make available for students is a choice of, because not everybody is electronic. So I think for us to say everybody has to have a Google Calendar is very prescriptive. There are some adults on the administrative team who they might use our Google Calendar feature because that's where they're going to get a lot of information, but they also keep a paper copy calendar. There are a lot of people who are comfortable with that paper calendar. They like it. It's very comforting to them. So what we want to do for our students is to provide them a lot of resources and a lot of tools, and if you want to use the Google Calendar to help you organize and manage yourself because you'd like to use an electronic calendar, that's one calendar that they could use. Some students might buy their own paper calendar and use that. What I think we want to do is to really teach them that it's best to be organized and how to be organized. But I can follow up for you to find out specifically what they're doing at the middle school and high school. But my understanding is that should be using School Fusion calendars, and the students could get the information that way, and then they could put it onto their own Google Calendar should they choose to do so.
And they're not all of them.
Now there may be some teachers, and I don't know, and there may be some teachers who are using a Google Calendar and have shared that with their students, because in Google I can create multiple calendars. So I have a calendar that's assigned to me as the Google user. It has my name on it. That I would call my personal calendar, but if I wanted to, I could create another calendar and share that with a class. So they certainly could.
That'd be
but
nice.
But I don't know right offhand exactly what everyone is doing.
Some consistency would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that similar to then how you have the district calendar and the school calendars, and when we have our calendar on our phone or on our computer, we're able to bring that calendar and put it on top of our calendar?
Yeah. So I
So
think-
is that what like Karen might be getting at? If you use a Fusion calendar and the teacher opens it up, then the students can actually put that on top of their own calendar without having to resubmit and re-enter everything?
They could, and I'll show you, here's my
I don't know
calendar.
that they understand that.
Yep.
I don't think they do.
So I'll show you my calendar. If you would like to, how many of you already have a Google account, a Gmail account? So if you have that, go to your Gmail account and log in. Okay. If you don't, go to calendar, if you're on one of ours or on your own computer in the web browser, go to calendar.google.com and just hit enter.
Because I'm on your computer.
On your computer, you can log in to your Gmail. Yep. But if you don't, go to calendar.google.com and hit enter.
Computer's so much larger than this. I got.
And in the top right-hand corner, when it asks you to sign in, you can use, the email address would be training1, the number 1, and then the password is Pewaukee. So if you don't have a Google account, I'm just giving you a dummy account to log into. So
The username is what?
training1 at Pewaukee School. So when you get to a screen that looks like this, or it may have a little blue sign in, if you click the sign in, the email, if you don't have a Google account, the email is training1@pewaukeeschools.org, and I didn't. The password is Pewaukee. And because I asked you to go to calendar.google.com, then the calendar should come up, right? If you log into your own Gmail account, you should have a black bar across the top. If you're logged into a Google account, either Gmail or Drive, this is my account, yes.
You're using a tablet next to me, it looks like she's on the mobile version. Does that make a
Yep.
difference?
Nope. And at the bottom of the mobile version, you can say go to desktop. If you scroll all the way down, there should be a choice to go to desktop if you want to look at the same thing. So then they'll look at the desktop version.
She was
You're very
asking me like I
welcome.
would know.
Sure you would, now you do. Now you do. So this is my calendar, and I'm just going to show you this as an example. There's a lot of information in particular about calendars and School Fusion calendar. I'll say this, and then I'll go back to it. I'll show you where it is. On our district website, the Pewaukee School District website. It's blue. There's a Parents tab. From that tab, there are some videos that we did in training last year on School Fusion and how to bring School Fusion into your Google Calendar. Okay. I'm not going to take the time to cover that today, just because we have a lot of information. If there is time toward the end, then, and I have some time, then I will show you how to pull in a School Fusion calendar into a Google Calendar, okay? But otherwise, again, from the district site, there's a parent tab, and then there's like a general information page. There are 4 or 5 videos that are linked there. One of them shows you how to bring the School Fusion calendar into a Google Calendar.
Can the Google Calendar be downloaded to your iPhone as well, like the district calendar can?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep. You'll pull in using.
Is it just other calendars?
Yeah.
I can figure it out.
Yep. So this is my calendar, and everybody, every student, and I say that with a caveat. In 5K through 3rd grade, where they are using Google and they are logging into the domain every day on the Chromebooks, they're not using Gmail and they're not using Calendar. Okay, so in 5K through 3rd grade, those students are not using Gmail and they're not using Calendar. They're pretty much using Google Drive to do word processing. In 2nd and 3rd grade, later on in the school year, they may begin to use Google Presentation to do some research and some presentations. In 3rd grade, they may begin to use some spreadsheet at the end of the year to collect and analyze and graph some data. But pretty much in kindergarten, 1st grade, they're using documents to do their spelling words, some of their writing. They're using the Chromebooks, and when they log in, then they have apps or sites that have been bookmarked for them, and that's how the students are accessing those. Okay. In 4th through 12th grade, just as in the past where we had email, those students do have access to email and to Calendar as well. In 4th grade, they're just beginning to learn that email address, learn how to use email, and so they're not using it as prevalently as in some of the upper grades. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Going back to Calendar, because I have an account, I'm automatically given a calendar. Shows up on the left-hand side. When I click on Calendar, here is my calendar and it's green. So everything that's over here on the calendar that's green is coming from my calendar. I also have other calendars. For instance, I talked about creating a shared calendar. Here's room 213, which is the room we're in. That's a calendar I created. So it shows up under the My Calendar section. If I click on that, it's purple now, and now you can see the things that are purple relate to that calendar. So the calendars that I create and manage show up under My Calendars. Then, under Other Calendars, these are calendars that people have created and shared with me. So for instance, there's an administrative cabinet calendar. This is a group of leaders in the district that meet. That calendar was created by the chief